Hey guys, it's Chris G coming to you live from Grumpy Bear's Retreat in Kennedy Meadows. We finally made it out of the desert. I would have done this video a little bit closer to Grumpy Bear's Retreat, but like a lot of businesses on the trail, they're completely off the grid. So if you get close to where they're at, you can hear their generator running. That's what they use to, run their lights and things like that. But today we're going to talk about section F, which was a pretty trying section. It's about 86 miles. It goes from Tecate, Mojave area all the way to Walker Pass. And this is pretty much the time to where you're getting out of the desert. And first off, last video was in Mojave. It's a town that's kind of hard to get into. But wound up splitting a ride with some people and got into Mojave. Once you get in there, there's a pretty cheap hotel. Motel 6 is by the airport. There's a grocery store. There's all kinds of little fast food restaurants there. It was a really nice place to take a break. And the next day I got really lucky and had gotten a ride from a trail angel back to the trailhead. But the issue with that was when I asked around, the only trail angel that would give me a ride would take me at 8:30. And just to give you a little hint about the area around Mojave, Tecate, it's in the middle of the desert. You've just skirted the Mojave Desert when you come out of hiker town to get there, and when you start hiking at 8:30, it's really warm. And the PCT water report actually warns that this section is the driest section on the trail as far as natural water sources and water caches and stuff like that. And I'd have to agree. And there was one weather report that I didn't hear when I left, but people had told me, is for the next couple of days when I was walking out, they expected high winds. And back east, when I hear high winds, I think, okay, maybe it's going to be a little bit windy for a few hours. But no, it was extreme high winds in the desert. People were snapping tent poles, trekking poles. I was hiding behind rocks to get away from the wind. But that's where we're going to start today. And I'm just glancing down at my notes, and that's going to be day 32 is the day that I left Mojave. I got a ride from the trail angel at 8:30, and that day it was really hot. I walked 25.5 miles to the first water source. It was Golden Oak Springs, and there was some information that there was camping around Golden Oak Springs, but there was like one little flat spot. There was some trees, but they were pretty dead, and so I ended up camping on top of this ridge on some trees where I saw it was really steep. It was like a 45-degree angle, and it really wasn't the best place to camp, and I paid for it because that wind that I was telling you about blew all night and kept me awake. And this was also the night that my favorite Gossamer gear, I think they're LT4 carbon fiber trekking poles, I have little nylon loop handles on there. And some kind of animal, I had them outside but the wind blew them over, and some kind of animal came and gnawed on the trekking poles and also stole the little loop handles from both of them and gnawed them completely off. It was crazy. I didn't have that happen on the AT. I had an animal gnaw on them, but that was it. So it was 26 miles to Golden Oak Springs, and that was a good water source there. And the next day I got up, and that would have been day 33. And it was still super windy. I mean, this wind, it's not that it was during the day and stopped. It was just windy for hours and hours and hours, and it never would give up. But the next day, made a conscious effort to get my 20 plus miles, which is what I was shooting for. But I looked around for at least an hour and a half to find a campsite that was out of the wind and protected. And I did, and everything was great. I found a nice manzanita area with some manzanita trees, and the weather was great. I got a great night's sleep, and it's amazing what that'll do for you. And the next night I got up, and the forested area I was in was just really nice. I thought we were getting to more forested area. Well, after that I was hiking out, and I hiked toward there's a few passes before you get to Walker Pass, and it was still super windy. And I got down to a few passes. I think the last pass I went by that day was Songbird Pass, and there's a water cache there. Just to give you an idea of how windy it was, they had 5-gallon jugs, and I was trying to pour the 5-gallon jug into my water bottle, and it was so windy it was blowing the water away. And of course at all these passes they say, oh, there's lots of camping there, but when you go through a pass and the wind is howling, I don't know, 20, 30 mile an hour, I've never hiked in sustained wind that high. So when I got there, I just kept going past it, and I found a little crook where some other people were camped, a little V that looked like it was pretty protected from the wind. But when I got in there, the wind was still blowing so hard. I knew that night that there was no even use in setting the tarp up because the wind was blowing so hard. It would just have ripped the tarp down, or it would just been smacking me in the face regardless of how I could tie it up. So that night, against probably my better judgment, I decided to cowboy camp in the hammock, and I was really lucky that I still had my inflatable pad, because that wind that was coming through there, the underquilt was basically useless. My top quilt, sleeping quilt, was pretty good at keeping me warm, but it got pretty chilly that night. So I got up the next day there, and I hiked down and I pushed to a place called Walker Pass Campground. And overall, all the places on the PCT that are established campgrounds so far, I mean, some of them have been pretty nice when they're in a national forest, but this one was a Bureau of Land Management campground where people could just drive in. And it wasn't really a campground. I mean, they had some spots for picnic tables, but there were no flat spots. All the trees in that area were completely dead. There was no spots to hang hammocks. There was very limited spots to even hang a tent, to put a tent. So what I ended up doing that night was I slept on the ground, I put my tarp up, and it was pretty cool that night. But the good part about this is when I woke up the next day, they have a bus that comes and gets you at Walker Pass and takes you all the way down 35 miles to Lake Isabella, which is a super nice place. You can ride the bus Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I recommend going in there. They have a full supermarket, a Vons supermarket. And the best part about Lake Isabella is they have an RV park that has laundry, showers, and for PCT hikers it's $10 a night. You can walk to the grocery store. They also have an excellent restaurant called the Coffee Mill that's not in Gut Hooks, but there's a lot of comments that are talking about go to the Coffee Mill. And I went there. Those people are super nice. They have really good food, really good coffee. And I basically spent the whole day in Lake Isabella doing my laundry because the Motel 6 didn't have laundry, and just enjoying Lake Isabella. And it was really nice. The next day I got up and went and ate at the Coffee Mill Cafe, but then I had turned down a ride at the campground at 7 o'clock because I wanted to go get breakfast. But then I had to try to get a ride back to Walker Pass, which, take in mind what I said, it's 36 miles, so that's a very long hitch. And so what my plan was going to stand outside of the Coffee Mill on the on-ramp to the interstate of where I wanted to go and see if I could get a ride. And it was actually a pretty strange ride because a veteran pulled over with his Vietnam veteran hat on, and there's a guy in the passenger seat, and he said, "Where you want to go?" And I had my sign with Walker Pass, and I said Walker Pass, and he said, "Well, I'm going to Mount Mesa or somewhere like that." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And the passenger said, "Well, I'll take you to Walker Pass." So it was kind of strange. The guy gave me a ride to the passenger seat's house. We got out of his house, got in his car, got his 2 dogs, and then we made the trip all the way up to Walker Pass, all 40 miles, and I think I gave him like $5 for gas. It was really strange. But once we made it to Walker Pass, that's where we're going to end Section F. And then after that, when we go into Section G, which is from Walker Pass to about Crabtree Meadows, which is past here, so I'm going to get that one probably after I get out of the Sierras or get some reception. That's when the weather on the PCT just turned, really nasty compared to what I had been seeing on the desert section, and I didn't have the gear for it. But that story will be for next time. Thanks for watching.